Once upon a time, lived a young princess, as we all know today as the great famous Sleeping Beauty. But how did she become sleepy? Why is she so sleepy? Is the original story anything like the Disney version or Maleficent, the movie that we all know today? Did a prince really kiss her unconscious body? Is the original version way more darker than what we know today? It's time for me to answer all these questions and more, since this is ASMR Aaron, back at it again, with another daily video to help you relax. So lay back and enjoy the ride. I hope this video gets you through your day, or even better, I hope this read helps you gently fall asleep. I can't wait to get started. This is the tale of Sleeping Beauty. Once upon a time, there lived a king and a queen who were very unhappy because they had no children. But at last, a little daughter was born, and their sorrow was turned to joy. All the bells in the land were rung the glad tidings. The king gave a christening feast so grand that the like of it had never been known. He invited all the fairies he could find in the kingdom. There were 7 of them, to come to the christening as godmothers. He hoped that each would give the princess a good gift. When the christening was over and the feast came, before each of the fairies, not failures, was placed a plate with a spoon, a knife, and a fork, all pure gold. But alas, as the fairies were about to set themselves at the table, there came into the hall a very old fairy who had not been invited. She had left the kingdom 50 years before and had not been seen or heard from till this day. The king at once ordered that a plate should be brought for her, but he could not furnish gold, one such as the others had. This made the old fairy angry, and she sat there and muttered to herself. A young fairy who sat near overheard her angry threats. This good godmother, fearing the old fairy might give the child an unlucky gift, hid herself behind a curtain. And she did this because she wished to speak last and perhaps be able to change the old fairy's gift. At the end of the feast, the youngest fairy stepped forward and said, "The princess shall be the most beautiful woman in the world." The second said, "She shall have a temper as sweet as an angel." And the third said, "She shall have a wonderful grace in all she does or says." And the fourth said, "She shall sing like a nightingale." I think that's a bird. And the fifth said, "She shall dance like a flower in the wind." The sixth said, "She shall play such music as was never heard on the earth." Then the old fairy's turn came. Shaking her head spitefully, she said, "When the princess is 17 years old, she shall prick her finger with a spindle, and she shall die. Now I'm assuming a spindle is the things that they used to sew and make cotton or wool back in the day. If I'm wrong, go ahead and flame me. At this, all the guests tremble, and many of them began to weep. The king and the queen wept loudest of all. Just then, the wise young fairy came from behind the curtain and said, "Do not grieve, O king and queen, your daughter shall not die. I cannot undo." Sorry, I had to burp. "I cannot undo what my elder sister has done." I guess the fairies are sisters. "The princess shall indeed prick her finger with the spindle, but shall not die. She shall fall into a sleep that would last 100 years. At the end of that time, the king's son will find her and awaken her." The king, hoping to save his children from the misfortune, command that all the spindles shall be burned. This was done, but it was all in vain. One day, the princess was 17 years old of age, and the king and queen left her alone in a castle. She wandered about the place and at last came to the little room in the top of the tower. There, an old woman, so old and deaf that she had never heard of the king's command, sat spinning. "What are you doing, good old woman?" asked the princess. "I am spinning, pretty child." Again, I'm assuming that's making cotton, not your mother's spin class. Sorry, that was a terrible joke. I won't do that again. "Ah," said the princess, "how do you do it? Let me see if I can spin also." She had just taken the spindle in her hand when, in some way, it pricked her finger. The princess dropped down on the floor. The old woman called for her help, and people came from all sides, but nothing could be done. When the young fairy heard the news, she came quickly to the castle. She knew that the princess must sleep 100 years and would be frightened if she found herself. When she awoke, so the fairy touched her with magic wand, all in place, except the king and queen. Ladies and gentlemen, pages, waiting maids, footmen, grooms in the stable, and even the horses, she touched them all. They all went to sleep, just where they were, and when they wanted touched them, and when the wand touched them. Some of the gentlemen were bowing to the ladies. The ladies were embroidering, and the groom stood carrying horses. The cook was slapping the kitchen body. The king and queen departed from the castle, giving orders no one was to go near it. This command, however, was not needed. In a little while there sprang around the castle a wood so thick that neither man nor beast could pass through. A great many changes take place in 100 years. The king has no other child, and when he died, his throne passed to another royal family. Even the story of the sleeping princess was almost forgotten. One day, the son of the king, who is the rain, was out hunting. he saw towers rising above the thick wood. He asked what they were, but no one could answer them. So I have to burp again. At last, an old peasant was found who said, "Your Highness, 50 years ago my father told me that there is a castle in the woods where the princess sleeps. And the most beautiful princess that ever lived. It was said that she must sleep there 100 years when she would be awakened by a king's son." At this, the young prince determined to find out the truth for himself. He leaped from the house. He leaped from his horse, not a house, and begun to force his way through the wood. To his astonishment, the stiff branches gave way and closed again, allowing none of the companions to follow. A beautiful palace rose before him. In the courtyard, the prince saw horses and men who looked as if they were dead. But he was not afraid and boldly entered the palace. There was guards motionless as stone gentlemen, the ladies, pages, and footmen, some standing, some sitting, but all statues. At the last, Prince came to the chamber of gold. There he saw upon a bed the fairest sight one has ever beheld, a princess of about 17 years old, who looked as if she had just fallen asleep. Trembling, the prince knelt beside her and awakened her with a kiss. And now the enchantment was broken. The prince looked at him with wondering eyes and said, "It is you, my prince. I have waited for you long." So happy were the two that they talked over an hour, which I guess is a long time back then. In the meantime, all the palace awakened. Place or palace, I guess. And each began to do what he was doing when he fell asleep. The gentleman went on bowing to the ladies. The cook went on slapping the kitchen boy. What? And servants began to serve the supper. I guess cooks slapped kitchen boys back then. This would not fly today, guys. And then the chef lady in the waiting, who was ready to die of hunger, told the princess aloud that supper was ready. The prince gave the princess his hand, and they all went into the great hall for supper. That very evening, and the prince and the princess were married. The next day, the prince took his bride to his father's palace, and they lived happily ever afterwards. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope this calmed you down, relaxed you, or even better, you're finally falling asleep, just like a Little Miss Sleeping Beauty over there. If you have any ideas for any new videos or anything else, feel free to comment below. I'm going to do one every night to help you guys fall asleep. Right now I'm doing 2 or 3 just because of the times going on right now. People need to calm down, so whatever we can do to help, right? Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you guys